Revealed, never be weak again, epic motivational speech that hits hard today. A shroud of fog swept over the small town of Maple Creek, wrapping it in a chilling embrace. On the street corners, the streetlights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the pavement. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, a low hum of energy that felt like static before a storm. Locals whispered about a truth one that shook the very foundations of their lives. The air was thick with mystery, amplified by the strange occurrences lately, a shooting star tearing across the sky, laughter echoing from abandoned houses, and lanterns appearing in windows filled with darkness. Something was stirring, a secret rumbling just beneath the surface waiting to burst free. The townsfolk looked uneasy, their eyes darting around as if the wind might carry away their fears. Evelyn, a woman with fiery red hair and a heart of gold, stood at the edge of the town square, clutching a piece of paper tightly in her trembling hands. She had heard the stories about a speech that ignited flames in the heart of those who heard it. But was it true? Did it hold the power to lift people from the depths of despair? She felt her chest tighten at the thought, the weight of her own struggles pressing down like a heavy stone. She wanted to believe something inside her craved hope. But then there was the suspicious figure lurking in the shadows, watching with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. Whispers filled the air, a collective unease that turned her skin prickly. What did this mean? The townsfolk murmured, unsure if it was fear or curiosity that propelled them forward. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the town clock chimed, the sound echoed through the square, each note sending ripples of tension through the air. Evelyn glanced at the figure again, the moment felt electric. She took a breath, stepping forward, drawn to the center of the square where the whispers were loudest. What was this speech? Why did people say it could change everything? Her heart raced as she drew closer, her senses heightened. Could she really find strength here? The crowd pressed in, eyes wide with expectation. The figure emerged from the shadows, face obscured by a hood, but the voice, when it called out, was clear and strong. Are you ready to be more than what you were molded to be? Evelyn felt the words wash over her like a wave, knocking the wind from her lungs. There it was, the spark she had been searching for. Would she seize it? The figure raised a hand, revealing a gleaming object that flickered like hope in the darkness. And with that, her heart thudded, a mixture of fear and exhilaration brewing inside her. The air crackled as the truth loomed over Maple Creek, ready to be revealed, and she couldn't help but wonder, what was to come next? Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest as the figure's voice sliced through the tension like a knife. This is your moment. Beneath the hood, piercing eyes gleamed with intensity, igniting something deep within her. But she hesitated, fear creeping in. What if the promises were hollow? What if nothing changed? The crowd around her leaned forward, anticipation bubbling like a pot on the verge of boiling over. Step forward. Who wants to break free? The figure beckoned, and the air buzzed with restless energy. People exchanged glances, some stepping back, but others surged ahead, pulled by an invisible force. The frightened whispers melted away, replaced by eager murmurs of "This is it. And I need this." Evelyn felt caught in a whirlwind. Everyone was searching for something: hope, change, strength. But could she trust this stranger cloaked in mystery? She looked closer, trying to catch a glimpse of the person behind the veil. Anxiety twisted her stomach, but hope sparkled in the back of her mind. Bring forth your doubts. The figure's voice rumbled, loud enough to echo across the square. What keeps you awake at night? With each word, the crowd leaned in, pressing closer. Faces filled with raw emotion reflected the weight of their struggles. A woman in the front broke down, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched her child. "I've lost everything," she cried, her voice piercing the atmosphere. "How can I be strong for him?" The figure's compassion was palpable. "This is your open wound. Your pain can fuel your fire. Will you let it?" Evelyn felt her breath catch. The question hung like a pendulum, ticking down to a moment of truth. Could she confront her own pain? Memories flooded her dark nights filled with doubt, the loss of her dreams overshadowed by failures. Gritting her teeth, she took a shuddering breath. "What if we fail again?" Someone shouted, doubt echoing in the crowd. The figure turned, lifting the gleaming object, a small, haunting lantern that flickered with an ethereal light. "You define failure, not the world. This," it paused, letting the suspense stretch, "is a beacon. Will you let it guide you, even through your darkest moments?" Whispers turned to shouts of rebellion, igniting the crowd. Their fears shifted to fury, pushing toward a pivotal moment. Evelyn felt it too, the rage against complacency, the thirst for a life reclaimed. "Keep your sorrow close. Use it. This will be your light." The figure's words sparked a wildfire within her. Evelyn stepped forward, heart pounding, feeling the warmth of the lantern's glow wash over her. The crowd shifted as if guided by the same pulse, a wave of determination rising like the tide. No more fear. She had to follow this call, to risk it all for the freedom they sought, and just as she fully committed to this new journey, a sudden chaos erupted at the edges of the crowd. Gasps rang out, and a chill swept back over Maple Creek, as the shadowy figure appeared again, this time in a stark contrast to the inspiring call. "Who dares to stand in the light?" It boomed, and the crowd recoiled in terror. Evelyn's pulse raced as she turned to see two figures emerging from the fog, clad in darkness, eyes glazed over with menace. The fear that had pushed her forward now threatened to undo her. Who were they? What did they want? A sense of urgency churned within her. She couldn't let this moment slip away. As tension coiled tight, one question burned in her mind: was she truly ready to face both the demons inside her and the unknown dangers approaching the town? The crowd's tension twisted like a knot, fear suffocating ambition. Evelyn blinked against the overwhelming panic, trying to focus through the chaos unfolding around her. The dark figures advanced, their movements deliberate, each step echoing ominously through the silence that followed the figure's command. What do they want?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The lantern's warm glow seemed to waver with her doubt, casting unsettling shadows across the faces surrounding her, faces that reflected the same concern and uncertainty. The first cloaked figure stepped forward, face obscured beneath a heavy hood. "You think you can escape what lies in the dark?" Its voice, low and taunting, slithered through the air, causing the crowd to shudder. "You're fools, chasing hopes in the light of a false beacon." Anger flared within Evelyn. They had come this far. This moment was meant to be different, about breaking chains, not reinforcing them. But her heart raced as the murmurs of dissent within the crowd began. Another figure appeared by the first, sharper in demeanor, with eyes more piercing than the initial cloaked stranger. It held a twisted, glinting dagger, gleaming with malice. "You play with powers you can't comprehend," this one said, its sneer evident even in the shadows. "In chasing freedom, you court chaos. Not all darkness can be vanquished with just a flicker of light." Evelyn felt a wave of doubt wash over her. Were they right? She turned briefly to the figure with the lantern, searching for reassurance, and was met with an impassive stare. The promise she had seen flickering in those eyes vanished. Were they truly just empty words? But then she remembered the woman with the child, the raw emotion, the desperate need to reclaim a life filled with darkness. The anger inside of her surged again. "You don't know us," Evelyn shouted, stepping closer to the edge of the crowd, the air charged with her resolve. "We've lost things. We've all battled our demons. We refuse to let fear control us." The shadowy figure smirked. You think shouting will change your fate? The dagger glinted again in the lantern's light as it was pointed toward her. You don't even know what true strength means. You think you walk into the light. What if that very light is what leads you to your demise? Evelyn shivered. A growing sense of dread gripped her heart. The air was thick with uncertainty, doubt swirling like a storm above their heads. She had to decide, would she stand and defy this force? Or would she be consumed, just another victim of fear? Behind her, the crowd surged with mixed emotions, half retreating, half rallying. Eager whispers battled against frightened gasps. The promise of change dangled precariously, teetering between hope and despair. Was she to lead them into the light or follow them into darkness? As the figures drew closer, Evelyn squared her shoulders. A rising fire ignited in her chest, a defiance that refused to be extinguished. She would not let fear claim this moment. If you want to fight, then let us fight, she declared, her voice roaring above the murmur. Suddenly, the world around her shifted. The lantern flared brightly, illuminating the faces of the crowd, bringing clarity amidst the confusion. Shock registered across the dark figures' faces. Were they unprepared for this burst of light? As the tension drew tight like a bowstring ready to snap, the crowd took a unified breath, ready to shift fate. But in that heartbeat, before anything could snap, a chilling scream pierced the air, a cry for help that sent goosebumps skittering down Evelyn's spine. And just like that, all eyes snapped towards the source of the sound, creating a moment of complete stillness that held infinite possibilities. What is happening? Evelyn thought, her heart racing faster than ever. Fear twisted into determination as she prepared for the unknown, a new chapter that could lead to liberation or terror. She had to act quickly. Was she strong enough to fight and lead? Or would she fall into the shadows like so many before her? The choice loomed large as chaos erupted around her. What would come next? The crowd's attention shifted as the scream echoed again, piercing through the thick tension like a knife. The sound was desperate, laced with a raw horror that made Evelyn's skin crawl. Instantly, the dark figures hesitated, their sneers replaced by fleeting expressions of confusion. It was a crack, one she could exploit. Stay together, she cried, feeling a surge of adrenaline push her forward. Although terror loomed, the fire ignited inside her propelled each word. We can't let them divide us. We must stand. The murmurs of uncertainty among her people grew louder, battling against the fresh wave of fear unleashed by the scream. Faces twisted in horror, glancing at one another, searching for strength. Would they retreat, or would they rally? Suddenly, another scream erupted, closer this time. It sliced through the air like a siren, drawing Evelyn's eyes toward the darkened alley on the edge of the gathering. A figure stumbled out, a woman, her clothes ripped and stained, dragging a child behind her. The child clutched at her, wide-eyed and trembling. The sight sent a jolt through the crowd. Evelyn felt a rush of compassion push her forward. Help her, she shouted, pointing toward the woman, her heart racing. Instinctively, she stepped away from the shield of the crowd, ready to go against the looming shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Before she could reach the woman, the cloaked figures surged forward again, their hesitation dissipated. They moved with a fluidity that seemed unnatural, long limbs slicing through the air, daggers gleaming like flashes of lightning. Fools! The first figure hissed, voice dripping with contempt. You think you can change your destiny? You will pay for your defiance. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest, but she couldn't falter now. She could hear the low murmur of the crowd behind her, shifting and preparing to follow. The bond of shared struggle ignited an urgency in her. We rise together. Their power is nothing without your fear. In that moment of rallying cry, something snapped within her, a realization that the threat was not only from the dark figures approaching but also from the fear threatened to chain them in place. More voices joined hers, a swell of resolve echoing in the night air. We will not bend. A man shouted, raising his arms. We will not break. The dark figures exchanged furious glances, narrowing their eyes as they were momentarily outnumbered. The energy among the crowd intensified, fear morphing into fury. It was a palpable transformation as their collective courage illuminated the darkness that tried to engulf them. But just as they began to push back, the first cloaked figure moved swiftly, lunging forward with its dagger aimed squarely at Evelyn. Time stilled. She felt a cold chill creep down her spine as adrenaline flooded her veins. At that instant, a shrill whistle filled the air. It was sharp, cutting through the chaos like a solitary star piercing the night sky. The dark figures faltered, glancing back just in time to see a flash, a blur of movement fast enough to make her question her own eyes. 3 masked figures, armed with their own weapons, charged in from the opposite direction, slicing through the tension like fire through water. "Get the child!" One of them shouted, a clear female voice rising above the clamor. Hope ignited, but uncertainty tinged the flame. Who were these new figures? Were they friend or foe? The balance of power shifted within moments, leaving the crowd on the precipice of a new reality. Evelyn's breath caught as she watched the fierce struggle unfold. Could they truly seize this moment? Would the light they had fought for continue to shine, or was the darkness growing too powerful even against their united stand? As the battle blurred into chaos, adrenaline surged anew, and she steadied herself for the fight of her life. The time for decisions was here. Would she embrace her strength, or would she let fear rule her heart? The child's frightened eyes locked onto hers, begging, pleading for an answer that could change everything. What would she choose? As the shadows danced and the air crackled with uncertainty, the next moment would shape their destiny or seal their fate. The chaos erupted like a thunderstorm brewing overhead, loud and relentless. Evelyn's heart raced as she forced herself to focus on the masked figures. Were they saviors or another threat? The air thickened with confusion, sharp enough to cut, yet there was a spark that illuminated the darkness, her instinct kicking in. "Stay close!" she yelled, her voice slicing through the noise. The crowd, now emboldened by her call, thrummed with a blend of hope and hesitation. People pressed in closer, gripping one another's arms, finding strength in their unity. The cloaked figures were relentless, swinging their blades in an intricate dance of deadly precision. One of the new fighters, a tall woman with dark hair pulled tight beneath her mask, spun through the fray, her weapon a blur, incapacitating one of the attackers with a swift strike. The crowd gasped in unison. It was a sight to behold, but that didn't quell the growing feeling of dread creeping back in. "Help them!" Evelyn shouted, pointing toward the masked fighters as they struggled against the dark figures. "We have to fight back." More people rushed forward, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and desperation. They grabbed anything at hand, stones, sticks, even pieces of wood, ready to defend their own. Evelyn's focus sharpened as she felt momentum building. They could either fight together or watch everything unravel. "Protect the child!" someone shouted, as the woman with the tattered clothes held her daughter close. Drawn by instinct, Evelyn moved toward them, heart hammering, ready to shield the innocent from harm's path. Time slowed as the first cloaked figure turned to face her, bloodlust reflected in its eyes. The thrill of fear sent icy fingers down her spine. Yet, she stood firm, fueled by the weight of the decisions on her shoulders. In that heartbeat, she recognized the power she held. The determination to protect was stronger than any terror that wrapped around her heart. As the ethereal lights flickered like fireflies in the distance, the air charged with unrestrained energy surged through the crowd. "Fight!" she yelled. "Now is our time to rise. Stand for one another." Each word wrapped around them, weaving a fabric of courage, binding each soul together. With renewed fury, the crowd surged forward, a wave against the dark tide threatening to engulf their hope. Suddenly, another scream cut through the commotion, different this time, a shrill sound of pain. A man stumbled out from the shadows, clutching his leg, blood streaming down his face as he fell to the ground. The fear among the crowd intensified. The looming darkness tugged at their resolve, searching for the cracks. The dark figures, temporarily stunned by the surge of defiance, reassessed the scene before them. The moment became electric, every breath, every heartbeat felt synchronized, drawing them closer together, yet fear clawed at the edges, testing their courage. "We won, be silenced!" shouted the woman fighter from earlier, her voice booming like a battle cry. With an impressive display of skill, she leaped forward again, replacing doubt with action as she took down another assailant. The crowd erupted, the tide of battle began to pull in their favor, but as quickly as hope soared, shadows coiled back, regrouping around the perimeter, lurking just out of reach. Evelyn's pulse quickened as she took in the scene. It was a moment pregnant with promise and peril. In the corner of her eye, she spotted two cloaked figures inching closer, daggers glinting, preparing an ambush. "Behind you!" she screamed, her voice breaking like thunder. Would they rally in time? Would her voice pierce through the din of chaos, or would they falter? Once again, the question hung in the air, heavy with fate, as they continued to push forward against impossible odds. The moment teetered on the edge of destiny, and Evelyn knew she had to act. Would she become the beacon they needed, or fall to the darkness lurking ever closer? The answer was waiting, just beyond reach. Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest, a relentless drum urging her forward. The cloaked figures shifted in the shadows, eyes gleaming like wolves ready to pounce. There was no time to waste. With a surge of adrenaline, she reached for the nearest makeshift weapon, an old, jagged scrap of metal half buried in the dirt. Gripping it tight, she felt its weight. You could fight with it, or you could die. "Everyone, listen!" she shouted, her voice ringing like a bell. "We're not going to cower. We fight or we fall." She stepped toward the nearest group of terrified townsfolk, their eyes wide in uncertainty. "Look at her." She gestured to the woman fighter now taking on two attackers alone. "If she can fight, so can we." The crowd stirred like a pot about to boil over. Murmurs rippled through them, igniting sparks of determination. A few stepped forward, brandishing weapons forged from desperation, a broken chair leg, an old crowbar, anything they could find. They stood taller, shoulders squared. Beneath the mounting fear was a growing clarity, the realization that they could be more than just bystanders. "Together!" Evelyn yelled, echoing hope. They needed to believe they could stand firm. Two of the masked fighters now rushed at her, blades flashing menacingly. In that harrowing moment, she found herself facing the dark void of their eyes, and a tempest of emotions flooded her: fury, fear, and something unexpected, an unwavering resolve. She swung her weapon powerfully, catching one of the attackers by surprise. It was a small victory, but the exhilaration of striking back thrummed through her veins, giving her strength. Evelyn felt emboldened. "Fight back! Show them we are not afraid!" A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd. Shouts of encouragement joined the fray. They locked eyes with one another, a silent pact binding them together against the encroaching darkness. Slowly but surely, they began to push back, their fear transforming into something resembling power. As the battle wore on, the chaos unfurled in vivid colors. Evelyn became aware of the ground beneath her feet. The earth was slick with blood, the air thick with the scent of sweat and adrenaline. She felt alive, every fiber of her being urging her forward. But the victory was fleeting. In another pulse of danger, a dark figure broke through their tightening defense. "Evelyn!" a voice cried out, but she barely had time to react. A man she recognized as one of her neighbors suddenly staggered in front of her. He took a thrust meant for her. The blade plunged deep into his side, and his face twisted in pure agony. Sorrow shattered through the surge of adrenaline warming her body, leaving only a chilling void behind. "No!" The word escaped her lips like a prayer, filled with raw grief. The din of combat faded, drowning in the agony of shock. Time distorted, stretched, giving her a moment to comprehend. This was not how it was supposed to go. Desperation clawed at her throat. But within that fractured moment, she realized. Every life in this crowd mattered. They were fighting for one another, for actions like the man sprawled on the ground. Evelyn felt a flame ignite deep within her, roaring to be unleashed, a drive to protect, to honor the fallen. "Get up! We need you!" she shouted, turning her focus back to the fight. For him. The crowd responded as if her words were an incantation, unleashing anger unbridled. They surged forward, tearing through the darkness with a collective scream, a cyclone of empowerment swirling about. Yet Evelyn knew there was something more lurking just beyond the fray, something not yet revealed. She glanced toward the shadows where the rest of the masked figures lingered, calculating. What were they waiting for? And as their eyes locked, she knew the worst was yet to come. Her next choice would change everything. Would she stand even if it meant facing a far greater evil? Evelyn's pulse quickened as the shadows writhed, and she could feel every nerve ending knitting together in fear and resolve. The guttural growls of the attackers filled the air, mingling with the cries of her neighbors fighting back. She had rekindled a fire inside them, but how long could they hold out against such ferocity? Stay close. She roared, her words carved through the chaos like a knife. Just as hope surged anew, a figure emerged from the depths of darkness, tall, broad-shouldered, clad entirely in black armor that glinted ominously beneath the flickering light. He stood like a monolith, a twisted smile creeping onto his face, chilling the blood in Evelyn's veins. "Ah, what do we have here?" His voice boomed, a mocking melody. Such a picturesque scene of defiance. "But you are all fools, believing you can rise against us." Evelyn's heart sank. This was not just another masked fighter. This one commanded authority, a presence that sucked the air from the clearing. The crowd hesitated, uncertainty rippling through them. "Do you know who I am?" he continued, stepping forward with confidence. "I am the harbinger of despair, and you are mere shadows about to be swallowed whole." Evelyn caught sight of the woman who had fought so bravely just moments ago. She was trembling, blade wavering. That flicker of doubt ignited a spark of panic within Evelyn. She couldn't let fear take hold. "Fight him!" she shouted, her voice breaking through his taunts. "Do not let him take your spirit." The crowd strained to hold the line, but the figure laughed, a sound that echoed like a cacophony of nails on a chalkboard. "Do you think your bonds can save you?" he sneered, raising his hand. Instantly, the shadows began to shift, swirling around him like a tempest, morphing into phantoms, dark figures that lunged at her frantic neighbors. A scream pierced the air as a man fell, grasping at the shadowy tendrils wrapping around him. Evelyn felt a deep, raw fear clawing at her throat, but in that moment, she felt something else too: unquenchable anger. "No!" she screamed, gripping her weapon tighter as she lunged toward the encroaching shadows. "We fight together." She collided with one of the phantoms, metal striking against its shadowy form. It dissipated momentarily, leaving a warmth of hope ignited in its wake, but it wasn't enough. The cloaked figure waved his hand again, and more phantoms sprang forth, each dragging members of her community into darkness as if snaring them with strings of despair. "Is this the best you can do?" The figure's laughter rolled like thunder, drowning out her cries. Just then, a flicker caught Evelyn's attention, something shiny in the shadows. A glimmer of light that momentarily illuminated the darkness. Was it a weapon? Or an escape? She felt the resolve forming anew, a connection to every person in front of her: neighbors, friends, family. "We are the light," she roared with conviction. "Together, we are stronger than any night." With a rallying cry, she turned her sharp gaze back to the harbinger. "This ends now." But as she advanced, ready to confront the embodiment of darkness, the shadows began to writhe uncomfortably, as if sensing her strength. The cloaked figure's face twitched in annoyance, and Evelyn realized that what lay ahead was no longer a mere battle, it was a reckoning. Yet deep in her gut, she understood one truth: fear is a choice. As the pulse of tension intensified, Evelyn locked eyes with the monstrous force opposing her. "Let us see who is really afraid." And just when she thought she had a chance, the earth trembled beneath their feet, and reality wavered, plunging into a moment where questions loomed larger than the darkness itself. What would be the price of their defiance? The air crackled, and with it hung the promise of a deeper evil, looming larger than any shadow. What lay in wait for them, and would they recognize it before it was too late? Evelyn felt the tremor beneath her feet like a heartbeat, and it echoed inside her chest. The ground split open in ripples, a valley of darkness threatening to swallow her whole. She staggered, her instincts screaming at her to run, but a fierce voice inside held her ground. This was not just her battle anymore, it was theirs. "Stand firm!" She shouted again, catching the gaze of a boy, no older than 15, standing at the fringe of the crowd, fear plastered across his face. "We fight for our homes, our families. This is where we make our stand." A wave of courage surged through the group, faces shifting from fear to determination. The shadows writhed like snakes, hungry and angry, but their resolve began to shine brighter. "Together!" Someone echoed from the back, a woman clasping her sword like a lifeline, her eyes fierce with newfound strength. The others rallied, voices blending into a chorus of defiance, rising against the eerie laughter that surrounded them. The Harbinger's smile faltered, and for a brief moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. The phantoms hesitated, confused by this unexpected unity. Evelyn seized the moment. "Push forward. Fight for every inch." She swung her weapon, a force of commitment that struck against the shadowy minion, shattering it into a cascade of darkness that scattered like dust. Using this breakthrough, the crowd surged ahead. Desperation charged the air, but so did fierce togetherness. As Evelyn pressed into the heart of the shadows, she noticed the glimmer again, just beyond the dark mass swirling before them. A reflection of light beckoned, almost like a beacon. It might be hope or their only chance. With each step, fresh shadows emerged, dark tendrils lashed out like whips, trying to pull them back. Evelyn felt hands tighten on her shoulder. A neighbor Derek, a gentle soul with an unremarkable past, now had fire in his eyes. "I won't leave you." He yelled over the chaos, his grip steadying her, and yet, there was a cost. The darker phantoms struck back. Screams pierced the air, the cacophony crescendoed with despair. Evelyn felt her heart race, the weight of what lay ahead crushing her spirit. Was this worth it? But in the depths of her mind, she remembered every face, every soul depending on this fight. "Hold on!" she cried, thrusting her way toward the source of light. The Harbinger's laughter echoed, growing more and more furious, shaking the air around them. With each moment, Evelyn could see cracks forming in the shadows, as if their united strength was breaking through the darkness. But a sudden burst of energy surged from their adversary. Shadows reformed in an explosion, a wall of darkness towering before them. Panic rippled through the crowd, their unity dented by this ferocious counterattack. "Stay together," Evelyn breathed, urging them to push back against the overwhelming dread. "Remember why you fight. For every person, every moment we have, don't let this darkness claim us." The walls seemed to press against them, a tangible essence of despair squeezing them tighter. But with every strike and every shout, the essence of hope flared, flickering defiantly in the fog of fear. Evelyn felt her veins pulse with adrenaline, a force of sheer will igniting within her. If they could make it to that light suddenly, the shadows surged violently, a clawing tide racing to drown out their spirit once and for all. The phantoms screamed like banshees, piercing through the resolve she fought to uphold. Then came the realization, a crushing inevitability that made her heart plummet. The Harbinger would not just defeat them, he wanted to bury their hope alive. Gritting her teeth, she charged forward, determination pulsing through her. "We are not just shadows. We are alive." Just as she reached for the light, the ground beneath them roared, shaking with fury. A cavernous silence fell. And then everything collapsed into darkness. What had they awakened? As Evelyn's vision faded into the void, she grasped at threads of consciousness, desperate to understand. Deep in that blackness, a voice crooned softly, wrapping around her like smoke. "Welcome to your reckoning." What awaited them in this dark void? Would hope survive in the depths of despair? Evelyn felt the cold embrace of darkness swell around her. It was suffocating, a weight pressing against her chest as panic clawed at her throat. She couldn't see, barely felt anything, yet the voice that had welcomed her lingered in the periphery of her mind, feeding off her fear. Fight please, she whispered to herself, gripping whatever remained of her courage tightly. She could feel the vibrations of a distant battle, cries of anguish and shouts of determination blended together in a sickening chorus. Then came the flicker, a brief flash pushing through the darkness. It illuminated faces, familiar, desperate faces. She recognized Derek, his eyes wild with determination, and the fierce woman from before, both struggling against the encroaching shadows. Evelyn's heart raced. "We're not done," she yelled, her voice reverberating through the void. "We can't give up." But the response was a whirlwind of haunting whispers, mocking her. "You cannot escape this," the voice slithered through the void, winding itself around the edges of her mind. "Your fight is futile." "No!" Evelyn shouted, pushing against the crushing despair that attempted to sap her spirit. "We fought together. We are stronger together." A crack of light split the air, brightening the oppressive gloom just enough to reveal the first hint of shapes, shadowy figures twisting and curling like smoke. The deeper shadows faltered, recoiling from the bright energy sparking inside her. Suddenly, the ground surged up beneath her, a hard surface replacing the void. The smell of earth and sweat invaded her senses. Evelyn was back, surrounded by the chaos of battle, but the shadows now felt different, less like malice and more like a test. "Evelyn! Over here!" Derek was fighting nearby, pushing back against a mass of shivering darkness that coiled toward him. Without hesitation, she sprinted over, adrenaline propelling her forward. "We need to push them back," she gasped, swinging her weapon to knock a shadow aside. The darkness shrieked and flared, and at that moment, she felt a surge of energy rushing through her as the faint whispers of the voice faded into the background. They were not alone. A wave of energy rippled through the crowd, igniting hope. As if fueled by her rallying call, more citizens emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted with concentration but resolute. They felt it too, the shift, the light breaking through the suffocating veil of despair. "Let the light guide you," Evelyn yelled, thrusting her sword toward the heart of the shadows. "We are the strength of this land. We will not fall." One by one, the fighters surged forward, shadows cracking and crumbling beneath their united will. As if testing them, the Harbinger unleashed tendrils of darkness, striking out like a tempest. The crowd scattered briefly, fear creeping back into the air. "No!" Evelyn cried, thrusting herself between the shadows and a girl who was barely 10, eyes wide with dread. "You can't take her. We protect each other." With a fierce swipe, she severed the nearest shadow. The darkness dissipated like mist under sunlight, and the girl pressed against her, fear starting to give way to trust. "All of you! Stand with me!" Evelyn shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos like a blade. "Remember our families. Our homes. They are worth fighting for." Bolstered by her words, the crowd rallied once more, voices rising in a brilliant harmony of strength. Together, they charged against the dark tide, determined to reclaim their fate, but something felt different. The shadows began to shift, reforming, coalescing into a taller figure. The Harbinger, now a looming silhouette before them, seemed furious, eyes glowing with malice. "You cannot win," he hissed, each word dripping with venom. Fear gnawed at Evelyn's resolve. What new nightmare had they awakened? Would the unity they forged in the heat of sweat and blood be enough against his wicked power? She clenched her jaw and met his gaze. "We are not afraid of you." As the Harbinger raised his hand, darkness swirled above him, promising devastation. Evelyn felt a surge of hope. It wasn't just her battle anymore, it was theirs. But the question hung in the air, heavy and ominous: would it be enough? It had to be. Evelyn stood at the center of the chaos, her heart racing as the dark figure loomed closer. A looming shadow, the harbinger of despair, ready to unleash a final chance of calamity. The crowd stood behind her, faces strained but determined, every single one of them learning to fight through their combined pain. With a booming voice, the harbinger declared, "You think your unity can save you? You cling to hope like children with fairy tales. The darkness around him pulsated, creeping nearer, closing in on them like a churning storm. Evelyn's resolve hardened. "We are not children. We are survivors," she called back, steadying her stance. She could feel Derek at her side, his presence a silent promise of strength. They were together, bound by the shared weight of every sacrifice and every ounce of pain. "Whatever's to come, we will face it together," she shouted, her voice echoing as a rallying cry. As if the universe took notice, the lantern's light flickered brighter behind her, illuminating familiar faces from her community neighbors, friends, each carrying their fears and scars but now transformed by a shared purpose. With every heartbeat, the energy shifted. Hope surged through the crowd, a wave of light against the shadowy tendrils threatening to engulf them. The harbinger's laughter turned bitter as he laughed, "Fools! You will be crushed." "No!" Evelyn shouted, and her call resonated through the air. "Remember the strength we have drawn from our pain. It fuels us." The crowd surged forward, catching the fire she ignited, their wounds becoming their weapons against the encroaching darkness. The moment they pressed their feet against the earth, something shifted. The shadows began to retreat, recoiling at the weight of their collective spirit. How could this be? The harbinger staggered back, confusion clouding his features for the first time. With her heart pounding like a drum echoing through the battlefield, Evelyn raised her weapon high, calling for unity. "Fight for every life, every hope. Let the light within us shine." Around her, voices rose in fervor. One by one, each citizen found their own strength, no longer dodging in fear, but now fighting back, first with whispers, then rising into a thunderous chant. They began to push back. The shadows twisted, hissing like serpents, a primal fury igniting in the harbinger's eyes. "You win," he screamed, as darkness coiled above him like a gathering storm. But Evelyn harder against the tide. She would not let this be the end. And in that moment, a brilliant light erupted from the lantern, a vivid blaze that cut through the shrouded despair. It shot into the sky, illuminating the dark corners of their fear, revealing the truth, the strength of their community, the bonds they had formed. Evelyn could feel the courage swarming around her, hands gripped around improvised weapons like torches of fire. They pressed forward against the advancing threat. "Keep moving," she urged, and like a well-oiled machine, the crowd surged, roaring fiercely as they clenched onto hope with white-knuckled determination. The harbinger faltered, shadows consuming him but losing their grip. As the last traces of his darkness slipped away, Evelyn felt weight lifting off her shoulders. This was their moment of truth. "Fight for each other," she cried, the words exploding from her throat as the shadows suddenly fractured around them, breaking apart in bursts of ink-black smoke. "No. This isn't over," the harbinger wailed, his fury echoing through the streets of Maple Creek. But Evelyn and the townsfolk knew better. Their collective power was undeniable. The darkness that once swallowed them found itself pinned against the brilliance of their unified spirits. One final push. Evelyn grasped the lantern, raising it high above her head. "This is our home. This is our fight." Together, they surged one last time, a tide of shining hope sweeping over the darkness. As if struck by lightning, the shadows began to dissipate, unraveling like fragile threads caught in wind. And then silence. The air cleared as sunlight broke across the horizon, illuminating the town of Maple Creek. Evelyn blinked against the brightness, disbelief flooding her mind. They had done it. The shadows had been vanquished, leaving behind only the remnants of what was, and a fresh promise of what could be. The townspeople began to cheer, the collective joy rising like a wave crashing into shore. They embraced one another, breathless laughter blending into gasps of disbelief. Derek stepped close, a smile breaking through his worry, and together, they shared a hug. Evelyn glanced around, her heart swelling with pride. Everyone had faced their fears together, had found strength in each other, and now a brighter future awaited. "I'm so proud of you all," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, not of sadness but of overwhelming hope. As they began to make their way back to their homes, a warmth filled the air. The ghosts of despair had fled, leaving only the promise of unity behind. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling her chest swell with resolve. "This isn't just the end, it's a beginning," she proclaimed to the crowd. And every soul nodded, understanding that together they could face anything that might come their way again. Don't let this moment of victory fade. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will challenge and inspire you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion, and don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling finale. Be a true fan and show your support for our adventure.